Kitco news coverage of the 32nd Global Metals, Mining and Critical Minerals is brought to you by First Majestic Silver.
Hello, I'm Michelle Makori, and this is Kitco News coming to you from the Bank of Montreal's Global Metals, Mining and Critical Minerals Conference here in Hollywood, Florida, where the creme de la creme of the industry has gathered, including the one and only Keith Neumeyer. Keith, great to have you back with us.
Great seeing you again, Michelle.
And of course, Keith, you are the founder and CEO of First Majestic Silver, as well as the founder and chairman of First Mining Gold. And that's why we will be discussing both gold and silver and First Majestic and your macro outlook and a whole range of topics now that we have you face to face with us again. But I want to pick up the conversation by starting off with a point that you made last year, which may be coming to fruition. You made the observation that given that silver is so critical to so many electronic devices and appliances and electric vehicles, and so vital to the greenification process and the transition towards clean green energy, that you think it's only a matter of time before some of the big players, and you singled out Tesla as an example, could look at controlling the supply chain and perhaps make a purchase of a silver mine or something to such effect. Now, that may have been prophetic, Keith, because subsequent to that, we have seen some movement in that. Elon Musk has made moves exploring opening a lithium refinery in Texas, given he needs lithium for Tesla batteries. And we saw lithium prices, of course, surge on that. And now there is growing speculation that silver could be next. Rumors have been speculating that Tesla and SpaceX, which really need silver desperately, could be looking at a mine. To substantiate that, Musk announced in May of 2022 that he would be interested in the mining industry if producing its own stock would accelerate the energy transition. I'm quoting him here. He said at the Future of Cars conference in 2022 that it's not out of the question, and that Tesla will address whatever limitations are on accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy. It's not that they necessarily wish to buy mining companies, but if that's the only way to accelerate the transition, then they will do that. Adding more fuel to the fire here as I build the background, Keith, he reportedly briefly flirted with Glencore, looking at buying a 10 to 20% stake in the mining company. And perhaps another potential indicator is that he's also started following Wall Street Silver on Twitter, which, as we know, is a big online community that played a big role in the silver squeeze. Now, from the man that sniffed out this possibility first, or at least first with regards to the people we've spoken to, what do you think the likelihood is of this happening in the not too distant future, perhaps even 2023?
Well, interesting enough, I've been coming to this conference, I think, for 17 consecutive years. And this is the first year that we have the automotive industry present, which is quite fascinating. And I know they're very much focused on battery metals, lithium and nickel and so on. But silver, nothing works without silver. These automobiles that they're here to find supply for just simply won't work without silver. And it's maybe a little bit low on their priority list because they're not really aware of the supply-demand fundamentals of the metal. But I think as they educate themselves and actually learn the supply challenges for the silver industry to supply the automotive sector, I think they will start looking at this industry a lot more aggressively. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a move at all. And if I was Elon Musk, I'd be very active in this area.
So it's fascinating, as you say, that it's the first year that we've had the automotive industry here at the BMO conference, and Tesla is also present in some capacity or another. Mm-hmm. So we can potentially see how that could play out. How much silver is used in Tesla?
Well, it's a very secretive, industry. Finding, out how much copper they use or silver they use, they're not going to supply us with this information. But we estimate there's approximately 1 kilo of silver in your average electric vehicle. I look at copper as the highway and silver as the glue. Without the glue, nothing works.
Why is silver so critical to electric vehicles?
Because it joins everything together, all the solder, all the connections between the computer systems. A Tesla electric car is basically a computer sitting on a stack of batteries. Without that computer operating those batteries, the electric vehicle won't work. And without silver, the computer won't work.
And there's no substitute for silver in this process?
No, there's not. No, because the speed of movement of information between the computer and the batteries cannot be duplicated without another metal.
And of course, we're also seeing solar panels, which require silver, being used more and more to charge the electric batteries, correct?
Mm-hmm, very much so.
Yeah, what are the dynamics there?
Well, we have the estimated consumption in the solar panels industry is about 160 million ounces of silver this coming year, 2023. Then the automotive sector, the electrical automotive sector, is estimated to be slightly shy of 100 million ounces of silver. So you've got two industries consuming about 30% of the world's supply of silver. The mining sector produces around 825 million ounces of silver. And these two industries didn't exist 20 years ago when I put First Majestic together. I put First Majestic together back then because I loved the supply-demand fundamentals for silver then based on computers and cell phones. Right. I never thought that we would have electric vehicles and solar panels. And it's quite exciting, but it's not showing up in price yet. As you probably know, the Silver Institute is projecting, I think, over 200 million ounce deficit this year, 2023, which is unheard of. These are the highest deficits we've seen in my career, and it's just going to keep going.
Yeah, and I believe that 2022 was in fact a record year for silver demand, according to the Silver Institute. Global silver demand reaching a new high of 1.21 billion ounces in 2022, up by 16% from 2021, which was also a high. Again, these aren't the official figures. I believe the official data, final data, comes out a little bit later in the year. So again,
and the estimate, just to jump in,
go ahead, yeah.
The estimate for 2023 is 1.4 billion ounces. And where's that silver going to come from? The miners aren't producing any more silver.
So where is that silver going to come from?
That's a good question. We need higher prices.
What about recycling, for example?
Recycling, is not increasing to any great degree because prices aren't going up. We saw recycling peak out at 250 million ounces back in 2015, I think it was. It could have been 2016. But today, recycling is 125 million ounces, half of what it was back then. At these prices, who's recycling silver? It's not economic. You can't remove the silver from computers or cell phones where a lot of this silver is being used. And, when was the last time you recycled a television? These televisions go into waste dumps. Yeah. They get taken away, refrigerators, ovens, stoves, household appliances, all this just gets thrown into waste dumps.
So clearly the fundamentals are there. We have increasing demand, reducing supply, bodes very well. Let's speculate a little bit further on this potential move of one of the big players into getting direct access to the supply chain, because it's not just Tesla. Obviously, Apple is very dependent on silver as well. But for argument's sake, what would happen if there was a Musk impact on silver? If Elon Musk came out and said, I'm buying a silver mine. Again, we're speculating, but let's play this game. What would you think would happen?
Well, I think the institutions would wake up to the supply-demand fundamentals of silver. And I think lithium is getting a little bit overheated right now because we've seen some pretty interesting investments in that sector. But nevertheless, it does, wake the industry up, because right now there's no institutional following in the mining sector as a whole. Right. Maybe lithium is a bit of a different world because of what's going on there. But in the silver gold sector, the institutions are gone. They're not investing.
When we say institutions, do we mean hedge funds? Do we mean pension funds? How do you define it?
Yeah, mutual funds, pension fund, the whole group, hedge funds, of course. All of these large investors who are active in the market. Most of them chase markets. That's just kind of a human nature thing that occurs. But when there's really no solid work being done by the big institutions on the supply-demand fundamentals of virtually any metal. Whether it's, and we're seeing supply problems in all metals across the board. Silver, of course, is a very small market, and it's being we're not seeing it in price. But just as I said, the supply-demand fundamentals are quite amazing for the metal.
Why do you think there hasn't been the corresponding institutional interest then?
Price. It's all sentiment. Markets are driven by sentiment, and when prices are going up, people want to buy. When prices are going down, people want to sell.
So much for, buy low, sell high, right?
That's
Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing?
That's what institutions should be doing. But they're looking at their quarterly performance. They're looking at trying to attract more funds into their institutions to do more trading and more investing. And if they don't have that quarterly performance, they're not going to get that inflow of capital. So they're concerned about investing in industries for the long term, which is what they should be doing. They should be making 2, 3, 4, 5-year bets, but the funds don't do that.
Beyond the funds, let's talk about some of the big players, because you mentioned previously that you do see consolidation in not too distant future, where some of the biggest players in the game ultimately gain control of all of these supply chains. Elaborate on that.
You've seen the movie I, Robot?
I have not yet seen the movie I, Robot. I think you asked me that last time. I really need to put that on my to-do list.
You gotta watch it because I think pretty well everyone would agree with me that we're going into a world whereby you have a very small group of companies, global companies, really controlling the supply chain of all industries. I mean, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's a completely different discussion. But it's a fact of life that companies are getting bigger by acquiring other companies, and they want to own their entire supply chain because they don't want to give margins along the way as a product goes through different aspects of the supply chain. So if an automotive company or an Apple, an electronics producer, can own the mine, can own the refinery, can own the mints, can own every chain, every link within that supply chain, then they're not giving away any margins. And I think that's where we're going.
That would be a pretty scary future if we have all of these big players sort of controlling everything.
You could think of it that way for sure, but that's a different philosophical discussion.
So again, going back to this Musk idea, which I'm harping on a little bit, but I believe you two have had some kind of Twitter interaction.
I don't know that for a fact. Was someone indirect? It was through the Wall Street Silver, and I commented on something, and then he commented, and I actually don't know if it was as a result of me or the other string that was going on. So I can't claim can't claim I've been in direct contact.
So no headline, Elon Musk contacts First Majestic Silver. That would be an inaccurate headline.
It would be, yeah, but not yet. I'm working on it.
Okay, so we're definitely not seeing that, but we are definitely seeing what seems to be some interest in silver via Twitter through Elon Musk. Okay, let's talk about what we expect for the price of silver for 2023. But before we do that, let's talk 2022. Because last time you were here, you were predicting silver at $30 per ounce. Silver prices reached their peak on March 8th at $27.50, so not too far off. But then silver fell to as low as $17.40 on September 1st. Seeing as we just discussed how silver demand hit a record high in 2022, what do you attribute that price drop to? What do you think happened there?
Well, this is why I've advocated that the silver companies get together and take the metal out of the exchanges, because we're, the mining sector as a whole, the only weakness or one of the major weaknesses that we have is that we don't have control over the price of the product that we produce. If you're a jean manufacturer or any kind of manufacturer, what your margin, your profit levels need to be in order to manage your business, and you put that price on your product and you sell it. Yeah. And in the mining sector, we're at the mercy of the banks. If they want to move these metals to whatever price they want to move them at, they can do it relatively easily. And with the silver industry being so small, at 800 million ounces at $20 an ounce, it's a $16 billion industry. Now, for them to move the metal around at will, they can do it.
When you say move the metal around, is this via futures contracts? Is this via options? Do you mean manipulate the price through paper silver, which is something we've discussed before?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call it manipulation. I think it's just managing their book.
Okay.
If Tesla phones them up tomorrow and says, I need 50 million ounces of silver for 2023, the bank writes a contract to sell them that amount of silver, whatever price they sell it at. Then it's within they now have a position. It's within their best interest to try to hold the price within a reasonable range of that short position that they've just taken on with that commercial buyer. So if that price all of a sudden goes, 50% higher than where their short position might exist, then it starts costing them margin on that trade. And they don't like that very much. So they try to prevent such things to occur.
But I think it's pretty safe to say that there is not enough physical silver to cover all the paper silver out there. And I believe Rick Rule says by like a ratio of 300 to 1 or something to that degree.
Yeah, I think that there's approximately 1 billion ounces of silver traded a day in the paper markets. And we produce 800 million ounces a year. So that's pretty crazy.
Right. So the idea which you advocated for last year and seems like you're still very much in favor of is this idea of a silver consortium. Would that be something like an OPEC cartel? Although cartel is negative connotations, but
yeah, I would say it's more of a cooperative situation, where we actually have direct contact with the end buyer, and we take out the middleman. And the middleman is basically the paper market, because the paper market takes hedges against our metal. They know how much metal we produce, and when it's coming into the system and how to deliver it to the end buyer. And if we would be shipping our metal directly to the consumer, we could set our own price rather than having to rely on the paper markets. The paper markets price everything. And with the leverage in the paper markets the way it is, I would like to see all the leverage removed and there'd be no leverage at all in the system.
Is this idea of a consortium gaining traction amongst your peers here?
I wish. It's tough because, a lot of the mining companies, they produce concentrates. And a concentrate's a different animal than a dory bar, for example, what we produce. And, we can hold back metal, we can... we're way more flexible. If you're a concentrate producer, you're at the, I would say maybe the mercy of the smelters. Maybe that's too aggressive of a statement, but you're relying on the smelters to produce your metal, and there's a delay, and you don't have the control over it as you would as a dory producer. So it's much more difficult for some mining companies to even think about going down that path. But a good majority of the miners are like First Majestic. And I would love to see some kind of cooperation.
That would make sense for the silver miners, for sure. Let's talk about the macro picture, because 2022 was challenging for silver on a macro level as well. We had uncertainty surrounding China's demand, firming US dollar. We had the war in Ukraine, rising global interest rates, all factoring against silver, in fact, making it the worst performing asset in the precious metals complex last year. This year, we are seeing an aggressive Fed, but we're seeing that inflation is being a little challenging to tame based on the latest inflation data. Many economists and analysts are actually expecting a scenario of stagflation, where we will have increased inflation and reduced economic activity. What is your outlook?
Well, if you compare today to, let's say the 1940s, after World War II, inflation took off. When everyone came back to their respective countries after the war had stopped, there was a big supply crunch, and inflation. I think it was north of 10%. I think it was around 15% inflation in the late 40s. And the government of the time decided that they would incentivize industry to produce more product. And they were able to squash inflation in less than 2 years as a result.
Supply side economics.
Right.
Yeah.
So supply more products, and squash prices. Unfortunately, what's happening today is the Feds are not only increasing interest rates, but they're also squashing the supply chain by de-incentivizing industry from producing more product. Cutting off oil supplies and so on and so forth. We get into a political discussion on what's going on globally, but nevertheless, so the world is being impacted by not only reduced supply of products, but also higher interest rates. And that is going to set a stage, I think, for a long-term inflationary cycle. We may have ups and downs, and nothing's ever straight line. But I think that I wouldn't be at all surprised within call it 2024, 2025 to see north of 10% inflation.
So you don't think the Fed is taming inflation?
Not
you're
at all.
saying you expect 10% inflation to be a normal by 2024, did you say?
I think they're causing inflation by interfering with the supply chain.
In general.
Yes, in general, right across the board.
Do you anticipate a Fed pause, a Fed pivot, as many are towards the second half of this year?
It's quite likely. I don't think they're going to reduce interest rates. I think they're dead set against trying to squash this economy. I think they want to see the markets crash. I think they want to see this whole trend over the last decade reverse itself, and that's going to be very harmful. And I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. I would not expect the Fed to reduce interest rates.
But a pause is what the general market consensus is at around 5.1% or so.
And I'm of the same view.
What does that do for silver?
Well, so far it's done nothing. So, as I said earlier in the interview, it's all sentiment driven. There's interest rates. Of course, the algos are all programmed, by these, high tech yuppies, or whatever you want to call them.
But the sentiment, Keith, is that usually gold leads, silver follows, at least in terms of the macro picture, right? Putting industrial use aside. And the general sentiment is that we're going to see a new all-time high for gold in 2023. Is that something you would agree with?
I think we're going to see a bit of a dip here, but yes, I do expect $3,000 gold by the end of the year.
3,000 gold by the end of the year. And the trigger that most people expect for that to be will be when we see weakness from the Fed. Is that what you would attribute a rise in gold to as well?
No, I don't really think that. I think that the central banks were record buyers last year. There's a reason for that, and that obviously, they're not coming clean on why that is happening. Whether it's the petrodollar, whether it's the oil being paid for in other currencies, Chinese yuan or gold, or India's come out very clearly and said it's not going to follow the what I'm getting at, and I just think that the demand for gold is going to increase dramatically by most investors, and that's going to cause prices.
Driven by the overall de-dollarization trend that we're seeing since the dollar has been weaponized perhaps to an extreme with the sanctions against Russia. And this is a trend that many of our guests have been saying, that we're going to see countries move away from the dollar because they don't want to be subject to that kind of influence and control. And we have the BRICS, for example, supposedly working on coming up with their own collective reserve currency. They're meeting in August in South Africa, potentially also discussing it being backed by commodities, gold playing a part in that. Is that the drivers that you think gets gold to 3,000 this year?
That's exactly the answer I should have said. You said it better than I did.
So that
for all those reasons.
That drives gold up to 3,000. Surely that takes silver along with it.
Of course.
So,
but I don't think we're going to see new highs in silver yet. I'll stick to my $30 target. I think silver is going to be somewhat delayed because of the economy, because it is an industrial metal. Gold is a currency, and gold is the granddaddy of all currencies. So it's going to move first, and it will drag, of course, silver. But I think silver is going to be delayed by probably 1 to 2 years.
So $3,000 gold, $30 silver?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I know.
What would that mean for that gold-silver ratio?
100 to 1 ratio.
Yeah.
I know, but then I think you're going to see silver take off, and that's where we're going to see triple-digit silver, and that's when, it could be Elon Musk taking a position in the silver space. There's going to be a catalyst at some point in time, and headlines in the Wall Street Journal might talk about the silver supply deficits. Maybe Barron's will run an article on silver. I don't know what the catalyst will be, but the investors, the institutions will wake up to the fundamentals of the metal, and that's when it'll start to move.
Triple-digit silver, Keith, that is a promise you've been making for a while now.
I was the first actually to say triple digits.
You coined the phrase, yes, you have. You coined the phrase triple-digit silver, but give me a quick recap then of all of the catalysts that you think could get us there.
I think it's going to be supply demand. I think it's simple as that. It's I know the demand is there, but we don't have that visible catalyst. We know that for example, the automotive companies, as I mentioned earlier, are here. Right. But they're looking at lithium, they're looking at nickel, they're not looking at silver.
Not yet.
Well, not yet, and that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to realize what's happening in this space, because maybe all of a sudden, Tesla picks up the phone and calls the bank to get some silver for 2024 or whatever the case may be, and they say, sorry, we can't give you the 50 million ounces of silver this year. We can only give you 40 million ounces or 25 million ounces. Then they go, what? What's going on? And that's, there's going to be some kind of catalyst that gets everyone lit up and gets people excited.
And that source silver to what?
Say that again?
And that would send silver to what? If that phone call happens, Elon Musk needs silver, he can't get his silver. What happens to the price?
It depends where gold is, but I think we're going to go to triple digits, and that's been my prediction for a couple of years now. And
what I'm going to ask you next.
Getting silver to $125, $150 an ounce, I think is reasonable.
By when?
That's a big question, but it's I can honestly state two things. One, I don't know, but the other is we're closer to that than we were a couple of years ago.
So I think
the stars are aligning.
Let's talk a little bit more about this central bank record purchase of gold, the speculation that we're going to see commodity-backed reserve currencies put forward by the BRICS, for example. The thinking is that gold is going to play a bigger role in that. You tend to agree. Do you see silver playing a role in that basket of commodities that potentially this new BRICS currency could be backed by?
I don't think it's possible because there's not enough metal around.
So silver cannot be part of this?
I don't think so. It's interesting you say that, because I remember a picture of Putin was taken probably about 5 years ago, and it was all over the internet, and he was standing in the vault, wherever it was, that was full of gold bars. But in the very back there, along the wall, there was all these pallets of silver. So, they report how much gold they have, or at least they used to until the Ukraine conflict started. But they don't report how much silver they have. So I'm sure the Chinese government, the Russian government, and other governments, possibly the Indian government, I'm not sure, maybe Turkey, these governments got to own some silver, I would think, but they don't talk about it. But, whether that means anything.
But you said you don't think that silver could be part of this basket of commodities.
No.
All right. Well,
just because there's not enough metal. Going to gold and silver, all the gold that's been mined, since, as far as we know, or most of it's sitting in vaults somewhere or in the form of jewelry. In the case of silver, 90% of all silver mined is gone. It's in the ocean, it's in waste dumps. We don't recycle it, it's just gone.
Okay, we'll circle back to Putin and the war in a minute, but seeing as we're talking about silver production, let's talk about First Majestic Silver, because you guys had record production in 2022. 31 million silver equivalent ounces, consisted of 10.5 million ounces of silver, 250,000 of gold. That's an overall 16% increase compared to 2021. So record production, but that was overshadowed by high costs, and particularly production costs at Jerritt Canyon. So break down that scenario for us. What happened there?
Yeah, fortunately, 80% of our production comes from 3 mines that are all profitable. But Jerritt Canyon, which is our most recent acquisition, it's burning cash. We've turned around a lot of mines in our 20-year history. 2023 is our 20th year. And every mine that we've purchased in that period of time has had a problem. You can't buy a mine that doesn't have a problem. Why would someone sell a mine that has no problems? So we have a view on Jerritt Canyon. Our technical staff thinks it can be turned around. It's taking longer than we have thought, and it's costing substantial amount of money to do it. We still have a view that it can be turned around, but it's affected by a couple of things. One is that the contractors on site are very high cost contractors, and we adopted them through the acquisition. I think the solution, or we think the solution, is go to self-mining. We need to get rid of contractors completely and go to full self-mining. And all our other operations in the business are all self-mining. We don't use contractors for mining. This was an unusual case, and
can you do that legally with the terms of the deal?
It can be. It's difficult though, because it takes time. The supply chain, going back to the supply chain, means that we have lead times of up 18 months for pieces of equipment. And these pieces of equipment, of course, cost money. So it's expensive to go to self-mining. Then staffing is also another issue. Northern Nevada is not the easiest place to find workforces. You've got small communities, and that's something that we're having to look at quite seriously. So it's not a snap of the finger solution. It takes time and effort, and that's what we're doing. And also, we're very negatively impacted by a severe weather event. You may know, or your listeners may know, that according to the information I've received, is the cold weather is 100-year records. They had minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit in certain parts of December. The mill froze up. At those kinds of temperatures, you just can't produce anything. The mine kept going, fortunately. So on a positive note, we've got a lot of stockpiles sitting at Jarrett Canyon waiting to go into the mill, but the mill at these temperatures is just very difficult to operate.
And of course, Jarrett Canyon was your diversification into gold, because First Majestic
Well,
silver...
diversification into another country, not so much gold.
Okay.
I would love to have found a nice silver mine in Nevada. Nevada's a great place to be. We're happy to be there. We do have a challenging asset, mind you, but if there's other acquisitions in the state of Nevada or Arizona or elsewhere in the United States, we'd act on it. But we're very active on the M&A front and continue to look.
Now, I believe that the all-in sustaining cost for gold production at Jarrett Canyon was around $2,500 per ounce in 2022. So again, how do you plan to bring this cost down? I mean, I know you said you're waiting for equipment to arrive, but what are the steps that you have ready to go to bring this down dramatically? Well,
one is throughput. So, the mine needs to run at 3,000 tons a day to make a profit. And it's currently running at 1,000 tons a day because of the weather issue. The mill just can't operate at these temperatures. It was running at around 2,200 tons a day back in Q3, but it had some other challenges with the contractors back then. And the contractor costs are quite high. So if we can lick the throughput by getting the production north of 3,000 tons per day, and that's our objective in the coming couple of quarters, and also deal with the contractors, I think we can solve the issue and start to make a profit.
All right. Well, on the upside, you've had, as I say, record outputs in some of your other assets, in particular Santa Elena operation in Mexico, record revenues of $624 million there. What's the plan to expand Santa Elena?
Yeah, that revenue number is an annual number. So we had revenues of north of $600 million in 2022. Yeah. Revenues in 2023 should be around $700 million, or a little bit north of that. But Santa Elena has really been the star of the portfolio. I've been in the mining sector for over 30 years, and there's always one asset in the portfolio. That's why I love multi-asset companies, and that's why I tend to shy away from single asset companies, because if something goes wrong, then the whole business can fail. With us, with a broad portfolio of assets, we have challenges with one, hopefully the other ones can manage the business for the period of time while we, fix the issues at the one that's not performing. That's what we've been doing for 20 years, and that's what we're doing now. And fortunately with Santa Elena, it's a huge cash flow producer, producing north of $40 million a year in profits, and it's really assisting us in the business. But we've also got San Dimas as well, which is another highly profitable mine.
So Jarrett Canyon is just dragging down the company overall right now, because all the other assets are performing very well.
I'm not sure if dragging down is the right word, but it is definitely an annoyance. I would say politely, but
you're optimistic you can still turn that around.
You know, I rely on my technical staff, my engineers and geologists who advise me on, and they're saying that it can be done, and it requires more time and more investment, and I'm trusting them that they're giving me the right information. And so far, you know, we'll see what happens. You know, if another couple of quarters continue the way it has over the last couple of quarters, then maybe some changes will be made. But right now, I'm willing to you know, give the business the benefit of the doubt, and we'll see how things go.
Would that change involve getting rid of that asset, selling off Jerritt Canyon potentially?
I wouldn't say selling it off. I think that'd be pretty dramatic. No, I wouldn't say that. I think that, you know, a couple of things need to change. We know that. It's just, you know, how we change it. You know, I can't really comment on it, you know, in a public forum like this, but, you know, I could tell you that there's lots of discussion going on internally right now.
Okay. As we've said, it's obviously taken away from the record production at the other mines. Year to date, the stock is down more or less 28%, year over year, 46%. You compare that to Pan American, also not doing so great, down year to date 14%, year over year 38% or so. So do you think it's not so much symbolic of specific issues with First Majestic, or can we extrapolate that to a maybe more sector-wide outlook?
I think we're being negatively impacted by Jerritt Canyon for sure. You know, we're at this conference, and every meeting I've had is about Jerritt Canyon. You know, how are you going to turn it around? You know, and it's just similar questions that you've been asking me, and they should be asking questions like that. You know, when you're producing gold at $2,500 an ounce, you know, that's a problem. You know, it can't continue for that long. You know, fortunately, we've got the balance sheet that can handle it, and our business, you know, can handle issues like that. But at the same time, you know, our responsibilities are to our shareholders, and there's a limit to, you know, my patience, and you know, we'll see how it goes. But you know, normally First Majestic, you know, performs fairly well, you know, because of our silver component, and you know, it has been underperforming the sector for sure, and I'm very well aware of it.
Well, you know, you could lower your production costs, and if gold hits that $3,000 a year target, our new all-time high in 2023, that should also help even things out.
Yeah. Well, you know, unfortunately, you can't rely on metal prices to bail you out.
Yeah.
You know, and if it happens, great. It's good for us. It's good for the shareholders as well. But
let's also discuss the kind of demand you've been seeing on the bullion side, because you're the only mining company, correct me if I'm wrong, that offers your own production in the form of silver bullion, which is for sale. And you've had a record year there, I think?
You're right, and thanks for asking. You know, over our e-commerce website, we sell a variety of different silver products, and our revenue exceeded $11 million last year. And that's about a 200% growth over a 2-year period. So the demand is there, and we could supply more, but the bottlenecks in the supply chain, you know, again, are very difficult. The mints cannot produce more metal, so we're making some changes. We have some announcements coming out in the next couple of months talking about this exact topic, where we're trying to fix that issue, because we want to see those revenues climb. I'd like to see 100% of our production go through the mints.
100% of the production going to retailers then?
Yeah, I would.
Well, we just discussed industrial use for silver. What would that mean?
Well, someone else will have to supply them. we make more money going through the retail buyer than we do going through the bank.
Is that because the premium is so much higher?
Right, exactly.
What are your current margins there?
Well, don't forget, it costs money to fabricate. So it's about a $2 cost to fabricate. So, and there's about a $2 margin on top of that.
Okay, so you would like essentially to have First Majestic silver production go fully to the physical bullion retail side?
That would be my goal, yes.
That's a big statement.
That is my goal.
All right. Well, so much for my theory that Elon Musk is going to be buying First Majestic
Well,
Silver.
they could step in anytime. And,
Pure speculation, just to be clear.
Any of the automotive manufacturers or any of the electronics manufacturers are welcome to come in, and we're a publicly traded company.
Right.
So, we're at the mercy of the markets.
Very quickly, because we touched on this, and it would be negligent to not, of course, mention the picture globally that we're seeing continuing a year later with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Because when we chatted last year, it was fresh, 2 days or 1 day into the invasion.
Right.
Granted, you're not a geopolitical strategist, but what do you think is the way that this thing plays out? What are your thoughts on the conflict?
I really hope that they would sit down at the table and just talk and negotiate some kind of resolution, but it doesn't seem like it's going to happen, which is really unfortunate. It's looking like it's being elevated, and there has been some demonstrations in Europe, in Paris and in Germany, which are, I think, quite positive. So the populace is, and even in Washington D.C. there was a demonstration. So the populace is coming out and talking and saying, "Hey, look, let's find a resolution to this matter." I try to be optimistic, but when I see the rhetoric that's coming out of some of the governments around the world, it's hard to be optimistic.
Yes, it looks like a diplomatic off-ramp is not so feasible in the near future, unfortunately. Do you think this really can escalate?
Well, it could, of course, escalate. Let's hope it doesn't.
Let's hope it doesn't.
I guess on the mining side, they need a lot of metal.
Yes, I think we chatted about this last time. Missiles require a lot of silver.
They do.
And that's not a good use of silver.
Terrible use of the metal.
Terrible use of the metal. So obviously concerns about war, but when I caught you poolside yesterday, you told me that the thing that actually concerns you most is artificial intelligence. And that's also something, to bring it back full circle, that Elon Musk has highlighted as a very big concern. And Frank Giustra, mining and media mogul Frank Giustra, has also highlighted it as one of his top concerns.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about artificial intelligence that you think is potentially such an existential threat?
You've got to go watch the movie I, Robot.
I'm not saying I disagree with you.
I know, but it's the second a computer feels that we are somehow a parasite to the planet, the human race I'm referring to, the computer, the artificial intelligence, can somehow run the planet more effectively than the human race can. You can't predict what a computer can do. Right now we have control over computers. Once the computers have control over us, then that's a different world.
You think that threat is becoming more and more likely?
Well, you said yourself earlier that you use technology to create your questions for me today, and
the good news is it didn't work.
Well,
I
true.
did. I tried to use ChatGPT to give you some background on you, just to see how that would work. The good news is I still have a job for now, because ChatGPT did not do a very good job of that. But we're seeing
it's early days.
Do you see a role for artificial intelligence in the mining sector?
It's possible. It's hard for me to believe that a robot working underground could outsmart nature. And because, we've been drilling holes in the mining sector. I mean, not us as a company, but the mining sector has been drilling holes in the ground, looking for all kinds of metals for, hundreds of years. And we're always at the mercy of Mother Nature. We drill a hole, we go down, we develop a tunnel, and then all of a sudden there's less metal there than we thought based on drilling. And that happens all the time. Whether a computer can improve that or not, I'm not sure.
Well, the good news is that artificial intelligence will need silver, right?
Mm-hmm. It will. More technology, more silver.
Okay, so we're going to end it on that optimistic note. Keith, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for chatting with us.
Nice seeing you.
Okay, Keith Neumeyer, thank you. And thank you for watching Kitco News. Keep it right here for more.
Kitco News coverage of the 32nd Global Metals, Mining and Critical Minerals is brought to you by First Majestic Silver.